Hello everyone. Welcome to day I think 8, no 9 of one of coding Java. So we finally did it. We're past the Java stages, and that means I don't have to create any more silly Google slides. Now since we're going to be working with processing, we're simply going to be learning with processing. So hope you guys are ready for that. So if you haven't downloaded processing yet, go ahead and go to processing.org, link in the description, hopefully, if I remember, and download it. And then once you have it, you'll open it up and it'll look like this. Now your sketch number might be different, but all that is it's a temporary file name. So we're going to be creating Java programs using this. And again, uh, processing is very similar to Java in syntax wise. And so a couple things that you're missing out is when you're creating your little sketch, right, or your file, you don't have to have the word class. Now there is a way to create classes because classes are still useful, and I will get into that soon. So let's just go over what we're going to be working on. We're going to be creating a Flappy Bird demo, all right? Because Flappy Bird is easy to use. So let's just put some comments on the top of our uh, on the top of our code to show everyone what this is all about. This is going to be version 0.0.1. I don't know. 0.1. All right. So a couple things that we're going to have to go over. First, let's start off by setting up our setup and draw function. And if again you don't remember from last time, or that part got cut out, a setup function is simply the first thing that runs. It's like the main function. Now the draw function is like a while loop, though it repeats over and over, but it makes sure it doesn't go over a certain frame rate. So you have your setup function that will declare all your variables and set everything up, and then you have your draw function that will draw things to the screen. So let's create those two functions. Because they're not returning anything, they're going to be of type void. And in processing, you rarely have to use the public keyword because it already knows that most of the things you're going to be using are public. So void setup, right? Setup. Now it highlighted this specific function in blue, and you could see that if you create another function, right, say add, it doesn't have the same blue, and that's because processing knows that the setup function is special. It knows that, hey, this is going to be specifically used for setting things up, so I'm going to highlight it in bold. Now and our second function, void draw. Now if you guys are used to Codiva, you're going to just have to get used to using a different IDE, which is processing. And a couple things that you'll note is that it doesn't like add in the other parentheses or the other curly brackets sometimes, or most of the time. So you're gonna have to add them in yourself, which isn't really a problem for us. So what are we gonna have to create? Well, what is in Flappy Bird? We'll have to go over game design. What you have to figure out what you have to add in first. So I guess I do have a whiteboard, and I guess I can use it. So let's see. For the first time in one-up coding, we're gonna use the blackboard, the whiteboard. It's a whiteboard. What am I doing? So there's two classes we're going to create, and again, a class is just a blueprint for an object. What is an object? It's just something that has multiple properties, something that can't be described just by one variable. So we're gonna have we'll start here. I don't know why I'm writing so big. We have to have our bird. That's not very visible, is it? Okay, let's go into if you remember, this is okay. If you remember what the sort of manager class is, in this folder in this sketch, we're gonna have the manager class. And so, how do we add in another class, right? The best way to do it is to just create a new tab. And what a new tab is, uh, it's not creating a new file, or yeah, it is creating a new file. It's just allowing us to use multiple files to keep our code clean. We don't want 1,000 words just top to bottom. We want to be able to look through them a lot easier. And so we're going to create our bird class in here. Uh, if you can't see it, you can't really see the window, but go ahead and create a new tab and just name it bird. And what's going to be inside our bird file? The bird class. Class bird. So we have our bird class. Now, what do we want it to have? Obviously, we want it to have these specific constants, right? Or these specific variables. Uh, and yeah, let's just go ahead and give it that. Now, if you remember what a class has, it has a constructor. Now, the constructor, all it is, hey, what do I want it to do right when I start this? We're also going to define the variables right here. We're going to give it a y, right? Now, we're not going to put anything in the y yet. We're just going to have that be the constructor strop. So we're going to create give it, I guess you can give it the velocity first, right? You can give it the gravity as well. And we're going to give it lift. Now let's create the constructor. And all the constructor is, it's like a function, except it has no return type, right? And the name of the function is going to be the name of your class. So we're not going to give it any variables. Maybe later on we can create different birds with different jumps, different lifts, right? Different gravities, different velocities. For now, let's just focus on creating one. So our bird class, it'll have a y. Now we're going to start the y around 25. And if you imagine, right, so we're gonna start, yeah, at 25. This dot, remember what the this dot key is. It means, hey, for this specific bird, I want it to have this certain variable. So this bird, this dot, I want it to give it y of 25, and I want to give it a velocity of 0. We don't want it to be moving at the very beginning. We want it to just stay constant. Start as not move. Oh, I spelled velocity wrong. Okay, we're gonna give it a gravity, right? This dot gravity. Let's say let's just pick a small number. What? Yeah, let's pick 0.2. I think 0.2 is small enough so that it doesn't like drop down horrendously, but it also doesn't sort of float. We want it to be sort of challenging. So whoops. And then we're going to give it a lift. Now, this is also arbitrary, right? It doesn't really matter, but we're going to give it around -5. And all the difference is the lift has to be greater than the gravity. Why? Because otherwise, when you jump, you won't jump past the hold of gravity. You just, the gravity will still push you down. So we're going to, let's go back to coding this, right? So we have our constructor, right? Defines the base variables. We're gonna create let's just start with the jump function, right? So what does the jump function do, right? Well, all we want it to do is increase the velocity, right? You don't want to just increase the y position, because then it'll sort of jump like really statically, right? Or it'll jump like really constant amounts. So instead of having a fluid increase, right, a fluid jump, it'll sort of just like create these really static hopping. So we're gonna have it increase the velocity instead. Oh, one more thing. Why is gravity 0.2 and why is lift negative? All right, again, why is gravity positive? Why is lift negative? Well, shouldn't it be the other way around, right? Gravity should bring you downwards, right? It should decrease the velocity so that you're going downwards. Lift should bring you upwards. But again, you have to remember that I'll stop going to the whiteboard. You have to remember that in our processing folder, right, y going downward is positive. So if we want it to go downward, we have to increase the velocity. If we want it to go upwards, we have to decrease the velocity. So it goes negative, it goes upwards. So jump, again, we're going to increase the velocity by the lift. That's all we're doing. All we're saying is, hey, make our velocity, or how much our y changes over time. That's the velocity. How much our y changes over time. We want to decrease that. So it goes upwards. We're going to have our update function, right? All this is background work. We want to say, I want, so yeah. What we want our update function to do is say, hey, apply gravity, right? And then just move the coordinate based on its velocity. So we're going to add gravity to our velocity. Say, hey, I want to start increasing our velocity so it starts going downwards. And then we're going to increase our y by our velocity. This velocity, oh my, this stuff velocity. Okay, so if I make any sort of small errors like that, oh okay, you can this dot lift. We're going to yeah, so we're gonna apply gravity. Say, hey, I want to sort of increase the velocity so that it goes down, it starts going downward. But I also want to and I also want to increase the y coordinate by its velocity. So again, I'll repeat it one last time. Velocity is just how much y changes over time. So at every single second, at every single time step, we're going to increase the y by its velocity. That's all our update function is going to do. And we're going to have our draw function. Oh, not draw function. We're going to call it show. Why? Because the draw function is already taken up. It's a special keyword, so we don't want to use it. It's like naming a variable this or new or float. We don't want to do that. We want to avoid naming our variables or functions as keywords. So void show. What do we want it to do? We want it to draw our thing to the screen, right? Now there's all these drawing functions and all these art sort of animation functions in processing that you kind of have to memorize or know. So one of them is fill. Fill means, hey, everything I draw from this point on, I want it to have this color. So you're gonna have to give it an RGB value. And RGB is how red you want it, how green you want it, how blue you want it. I want to draw something that's black, a black dot that moves up and down. So I want it to give it no color. So if you know, color theory or whatever, I don't know what it's called. If you give it no red, green, or blue, it'll turn out black. Now, how do you add the max red, green, and blue to turn it white? It's 255. So it's 255, 255, 255. That will give you white. And that's what we're going to color our background, just so that there's sharp contrast, right? So, and just to make this simple, I'm going to make our bird a circle, right? It'll be a 3x3 circle ellipse. It's just this small dot moving on the screen. And how do you do that? Well, processing has this built-in function called Ellipse. all ellipse does is, hey, draw ellipse at this certain coordinate and size. So how are we going to do that? Well, the first number will be the x coordinate, right? You see here it has 4 parameters: an x coordinate, y coordinate, a width, and a height. So our x coordinate, because we're not going to be changing our x coordinate, right? It'll just sort of stay constant. Let's just put it at like 25. It'll be quarter across the screen, and it won't change. Now our y coordinate, we want it to change. And what do we want our y coordinate to be? This dot y. We have 2 more variables, the width and the height. Let's just make it small, a 3x3 circle. There you go, semicolon. Bam, we finished our bird function, right? So let's go back to our sketch, right? We're gonna say you always want to declare global variables. If you remember my scope lesson, right? You want to declare global variables and edit them inside of your functions. So we're gonna say, hey, we want a bird, right? An object of type bird. We're gonna call it bird, right? We're not gonna give it a value yet. We're gonna give it a value in setup. Now you could give it a value here, but it's not advised. Sometimes we want setup because it runs first, right? It's the first thing it runs. We want that to control what our variables are. Why? Because sometimes your code will jump around and it won't. Basically, it'll miss timing, and if you assign it here, say equals new bird, right? It won't know that. It wouldn't have assigned it in time. It's weird. Just follow me, right? We want to give our bird, right, a new value, right? We're gonna create a new bird object, right? Calling on the constructor of the bird class. We're gonna say, hey, create a new bird for me, and put it inside bird. Now, we're gonna just say, hey, background. We want our background to be 255, 255, 255. We're gonna say, hey, give me a white background, and we're gonna update our bird, and then we're gonna draw our bird or show our bird. Just as simple as that. We're gonna say, hey, we have our game object here, right? A bird class or a bird object. We want to update it. We want to update it, right? Increase its velocity and draw it. Let's watch this. Now, it might end up really weird, and I'll show you and explain why. Oh no. Hold on. It's not capturing the right window. No. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Here, let me draw it one more time. There is an error. Let me just draw it. Oh, it drew itself and just fell instantly. How do we avoid that? Well, let's just lock our bird between certain heights, right? So in our update function, we don't want it to just fall continuously. We want to say, hey, if it touches the ground, stop. Now in the actual game, if you hit the ground, you lose, but we'll work on adding that in later. For now, we'll just make it stop and stick in place. So if we're gonna create an if statement, right? So if this dot y is greater than height. Now what is height? Our code or our compiler, right, or our processing gives us a specific variable called height that says, hey, this is the height of the screen. The screen we're using, it's the height. It just yeah. If you want to learn how that works, you can look up the processing documents. But for now, you could just believe me. The height is just the height of the screen. So if the y is greater than the height, right, we want to say this dot y equals height. We want it to set it at the height, so it just sits at the bottom. Now we also want to say this dot velocity equals 0. Why? Because we don't want our velocity to jump up and down still while it's sitting at the bottom. Now we're gonna use the same exact. Let me just copy paste this. We also don't want him to jump all the way up, otherwise that won't really be fair. Oh, yes, okay. We want to say, hey, at 0, right, or 0, which is the top of the screen. This is the top of the screen. We don't want him to jump past that point. And later on, again, we'll be working on how to add in a game over, game over factor. But for now, let's just work on this. Now, one last thing. Let's just draw this. Let's just run this. Hey, it's sitting. Now, if you know how to play Flappy Bird, or if you ever play Flappy Bird, you'll know that I missed something. What did I miss? I can't jump yet. I didn't add anything that allows us to jump. So how do you do that? Inside of our manager class, or inside of our setup and draw functions, we're gonna add one more function. It's called key pressed. And you notice, hey, key pressed is also bold. That means it's a special function. That means processing gives this function certain abilities. It gives it certain things that we can use, and it knows what this function is, right? So we're gonna say, hey, if they press a spacebar, right? And when you say key pressed, inside of the key pressed function, processing gives it a specific variable. What I mean by give is it means you can use this variable that has a specific value when you call it. And what that variable is key. Key inside of key, it's a variable, right? It's a character variable that stores the key of the key that they just pressed. So we want to say, hey, if it's a spacebar, right, which is just an empty space, we want to say bird dot jump. Okay. Now let's see if this works. Hold on, I'm missing something. Well, this is awkward. You guys are watching me fail. Let me figure out what's wrong with this first, guys. What did I do wrong? See, I actually wrote notes this time. Whoa, whole new Luke. It should be working. Here, let me just try running it again. Let me see if... Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, we ran it and it works. You can press jump. So we created our bird. Isn't this amazing? We can always alter how much we want it to jump, how big the screen is actually. You can edit the screen size right here. In our setup function, you say size. Let's say 100 by 100, which I think is the default one. And it is the default one. So you can increase the height of your screen, right? You can increase the gravity. Maybe it pulls on them harder. You can increase the lift. Maybe you want them to jump higher. I'll let all the editing, that little editing, up to you, how you want your game of Flappy Bird to work. So we're almost done. Let's just save our game. Go ahead and click on File. You won't see it. Click on File, click on Save, right? And you'll open up your folder. You can store it anywhere you want. And name the folder anything you want. Oh no. I froze my computer. But once you're done saving, go ahead and good job today, everyone. We'll be working on adding in the pipes and adding in any other elements we want later on. Thank you guys so much for watching. That's it for today. I will see you guys in the next video. Hello, viewers. I'm sorry, I made a little mistake. Let me correct this. I had my mic off whenever I did the whiteboard parts. So all I wanted to say is, for our bird, we want to have a y value, right? What the y coordinate will be. velocity, which is how much our y will change over time, gravity, which is just a number we'll add to the velocity over time, and lift, which is just how much we want our bird to jump whenever we press the spacebar. And so if you check out the coordinate plane of our box, it actually starts at 0 here, 0, 0, and to go this way, we increase our x, and to go this way, we increase our y. So if we want our gravity to go downwards, if we want to add gravity, we increase our y, and we decrease our y to go upwards. So the couple of functions that we want to have are our update function, right? All our update function does is it adds all the background work. It does all the physics. It does all the adding and subtracting. And then we have our show function. All the show function does is it draws our image. It does all the visual stuff. And we're gonna have one last function for our bird, the jump function. All the jump function does is it has our bird jump. Okay,